Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMZ Diwan-e-ghalib-meri-zubaani. To all our returning viewers, we are delighted you could join us again. And for the new viewers, we are happy you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now today's episode is part of the DGMZ Miniseries that we are currently running at the channel, dedicated to the immortal love story of Layla-e-Majnun. As part of the series, we are narrating the story from a book. And today we are going to pick up the narration from chapter 35 onwards. But before I start the narration, DGMZ would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate Suluk Press Publishing House for allowing us to narrate this story from the publication titled The Story of Layla-e-Majnun Nizami, translated from the Persian and edited by Rudolph Gelpke. English version in collaboration with E. Matin and G. Hill. Final chapter translated from the Persian by Pirzia Inayat Khan and Omid Safi. Now in the description section of this episode, you will find a link that you can use to purchase this book for any viewer who would want to own a copy. In addition, we will also paste links to the DGMZ Ghazal episodes, where Ghalib mentions Layla Majnun. So, let's start with the narration for today. Start of narration. The Story of Layla-e-Majnun, Chapter 35. Thus he spoke and continued on his way, leaving behind the people and their tents. Love was glowing in him. When it burst into flames, it also took hold of his tongue, the words streaming unbidden from his lips, verses strung together like pearls in a necklace. Carelessly, he cast them away as toys for the wind to play with. What did it matter to the poet? Was he not rich? Was he not free? Had he not severed the rope which keeps men tied together? To his own kind, he had become a savage. But even a savage is not entirely alone in this world. Even a Majnun has companions. His were the animals. He had come as a stranger into their realm, yet had not hunted them. He had crept into their caves without driving them out. Just as they, he was afraid and fled whenever men approached. Did Majnun, therefore, appear to the animals like an animal himself? Not entirely. They sensed that he was different. He possessed a strange power, unlike that of the lion, the panther, or the wolf, because he did not catch and devour smaller animals. On the contrary, if he found one of them caught in a trap, he stroked its fur, talked until it had calmed down, and then released it. Why? What kind of a creature was he? Who could understand him? He fed on roots, grass, and fruit, but even of these he ate sparingly and showed no fear of the powerful four-footed beasts of prey, which could so easily have torn him to pieces and devoured him. Yet they did not do so. To everyone's surprise, Majnun was never threatened by any of the beasts that hunt in the steppe and the desert. They became used to his appearance. He even attracted them. Catching his scent from afar, they came flying, running, trotting, creeping, drawing narrowing circles around him. Among them were animals of every kind and size. But what a miracle! They did not attack each other and lost all fear as long as this trusted stranger stayed in their midst. They seemed to forget their hunger and became tame and friendly. At last, a lion began to keep watch over Majnun, like a dog guarding a flock. Other animals followed: a stag, a wolf, a desert fox. Every day there were more of them. If Majnun rested, the place soon looked like an animal camp. He became a king among his court, like Solomon. Does one not think of a vulture as a bone picker? And was not Majnun merely a skeleton covered with skin? Yet he rested peacefully in the shade of the vulture's wings, which at noon protected him against the heat of the sun. What a good king indeed! One who never oppressed his own subjects, nor extorted taxes, nor sacrificed their blood to make war on other peoples. Guided by the vulture's example, the other beasts of prey also lost their urge to kill. The wolf no longer devoured the lamb. The lion kept his claws off the wild ass. The lioness gave milk to the orphaned baby gazelle, and the jackal buried his age-old feud with the hare. It was a peaceful army that travelled with Majnun as he roamed the wilderness, his animals always at his heels. Was their love less rewarding than that of human beings? Do not believe it. If Majnun wanted to rest, the fox swept a place clean for him with its tail. The wild ass offered its neck as a pillow, the stag its loins as a bolster. The gazelle caressed his feet. The lion kept watch ready to pounce, and wolf and panther circled the camp as keen-eyed scouts. Thus each animal assiduously did its duty, watching over Majnun, protecting and caring for him. He lived among all these creatures like an exiled ruler in a foreign country, or rather like an angel with his wings tied. But the more he became the master and friend of the animals, the less often did he encounter human beings. Many of those who had visited him feared his new followers. When he appeared with his companions, people avoided him. If somebody insisted on seeing him, the animals, full of suspicion, gathered around their king, bared their teeth and growled, until Majnun calmed them down and ordered that the visitor be admitted. Then the stranger remained unharmed. If, however, he intended to disturb, harm, or mock, he had to make good his escape speedily, lest sharp teeth and claws should tear his garments and his limbs. There was no longer admission to this chieftain without special permission. Had anyone ever known a shepherd like Majnun? Was there ever a shepherd with such a flock? Leaving the human world, he had come to the wilderness, reconciling wild ones with wild ones. How surprised people were when this story reached the tents, and from there the villages and towns. How was it possible? Was it not a fairy tale, a saga from times gone by? Many just would not believe until they had seen with their own eyes. Some even undertook long journeys to satisfy their curiosity or their doubts. When they found Majnun surrounded by his court of loyal, four-footed and winged followers, they did not know what to think or what to say, and their surprise was unbounded. Many pitied him and brought food and drink, knowing that out of love for Layla, he had become a hermit. But Majnun accepted no more than a bite or a sip. Everything else he gave to his animals. And as he was good, so they became good also. The story of Layla and Majnun, chapter 36. Are animals not an echo of human beings? They are what we make of them. I remember a story I was once told of a ruler in the town of Marwa. Listen, this king had a number of watchdogs. They were not ordinary dogs. Rather, they resembled chained demons. Every one had the strength of a wild boar, and their massive jaws were strong enough to sever the head of a camel with one bite. You will ask, why did the king keep such monsters? Well, there was a good reason. If someone fell out of favor with the king and aroused his wrath, he was thrown to these hounds, who would tear the victim to pieces and devour him. Among the king's courtiers, there happened to be a youth of great intelligence, well versed in all arts and devices. He knew, of course, all about the canine monsters and their terrifying purpose. However happy he appeared outside, secretly he trembled. Was not the king a moody hothead, wild and irascible? Was he not capable of hating tomorrow whom he loved today? And how quickly that could happen, in spite of all caution. A ruler's favor is as unpredictable as the sky in spring. The young man shuddered, thinking of the fate which might be in store for him. What was he to do? After deep thought, he made his decision. As if by chance, he began to walk in the neighborhood of the kennels and to exchange friendly words with the keepers whenever there was an opportunity. He also unobtrusively gave them small presents and so gradually won their confidence and goodwill. When this first step had succeeded, he took the next. Friendship with the keepers opened the door to friendship with their charges. Now he brought presents for the dogs, pieces of meat, sometimes a whole sheep. He began to humor these wild beasts and talk to them until they became more and more familiar and began to expect him, howling with pleasure and leaping up impatiently in their cages as soon as they saw him coming. He was now able to stroke them and pat their heads without danger, which had been his object from the beginning. That is how things were when, on one unlucky day, the king, for no particular reason, became angry with the young courtier. In his blind fury, he gave the order to throw the unhappy man into the kennels. The king's will was done. Tying the helpless youth hand and foot, the guards pushed him in front of the bloodthirsty beasts. But what did these monsters do? Human beings may be ungrateful, not so wild dogs. When they recognized their friend, who was unable to move, they gathered around him, wagging their tails and licking his face and hands lovingly to show their affection. Then they crouched around him like sentinels, ready to defend him against his enemies and to protect him from danger. Nothing could tempt them away. How surprised were the henchmen who had banked on watching from a safe distance a cruel and bloodthirsty spectacle. Instead, they witnessed an example of affection between man and animal. They could hardly believe their eyes, but the dogs simply disregarded their shouts. What in the meantime happened to the king? When the day went to its rest, draping the gold-embroidered veil of the approaching twilight over its white garment, the monarch's wrath began to abate. As yet, he did not know what we have already heard, because no one dared to tell him. But regretting his rash order, he felt deeply remorseful and finally said to his friends, "Why ever did I let the dogs tear this innocent gazelle to pieces? Go and see what has happened to the poor man." The courtiers did as they were told and returned with one of the guards, ordering him to report to the king. No one will be surprised to hear that this man was afraid to tell the whole truth and to confess how the youth, by showing friendliness and distributing presents, had won the confidence of the dogs and their guards. So he said, "Your Majesty, this youth cannot be human. He must be an angel from heaven, for whom the Almighty has worked a miracle. Come and see for yourself. There he sits, surrounded by all these hounds, not even baring their teeth. They nuzzle and lick him. Is that not clearly God's work? These dogs, as you know, are wolves with dragons' faces. Yet, O king, not one of them has harmed so much as a hair of his head." When the king heard this, he jumped from his throne, rushing to the kennel as fast as his legs would carry him to save the unhappy youth, if possible in the nick of time. But there was little need for haste. The king saw the miracle with his own eyes. Tears rolled down his cheeks like torrents. And when the guards had untied the condemned man and brought him out of the kennel, the king, sobbing violently, embraced him, asking his forgiveness 1,000 times. The king, however, did not altogether believe in miracles. After a while, his curiosity was aroused, and when he was alone with the rescued man, he asked, "Now tell me how this really happened. How did you remain unharmed in there, even for 1 minute?" The youth was too clever to hide the truth from the king. Having told him the whole story, he continued, "You see, your dogs became fond of me and saved my life for a few chunks of meat. And you, my king, you know quite well that I have served you loyally ever since I was a boy, for 10 long years. Yet, just because I once annoyed you, you intended to destroy me and wanted your hounds to tear me to pieces. Who then is a better friend, you or your dogs? Who deserves confidence and respect, you or the dogs? Thus he spoke with great daring, but this time the king was not angry. He accepted this experience as a sign and a lesson, however bitter the dose. In future, he left the dogs to themselves and no longer threw men into their cage to be devoured. Instead, he tamed the beast in his own soul. But let us return to Majnun. He was kind to the animals, not from fear, but out of the goodness of his heart, and they remained loyal to him, just as the dogs were loyal to the youth of Marwa. As we shall see, they stayed with him to the last, even longer. Although free and wild, they followed him wherever he went and rested wherever he did. Do you grasp the significance? Do you understand the meaning? If you, too, follow Majnun, you will not have to drink the blood-stained water of this perishable world. The story of Layla and Majnun, Chapter 37. The night was as light as day, and the face of the sky a garden of flowers, hung resplendent high above the earth. Sparkling like a golden ornament, the firmament kept turning. The 7 planets, their hands linked, trod out the dance of fate on the carpet of the horizon. Meteors hurtled through the dome of heaven like spears of light thrown against demons. The air was impregnated with scent, and the jewel of the moon was spreading a garment of silver rays over mountains and valleys. Truly, the royal tent of this night was a matchless miracle, full of wonders. Like a great Shah, the full moon was riding through it, draped in golden brocade. Mercury was his arrow, shot from the royal bow. Venus, the dancer, adorned the border of his saddle as a lovely ornament, while the sword of the sun, which during the day scorches the world, remained hidden in its scabbard. In the heat of anger, Mars was seeking to blind the eye of his enemy, while Jupiter carried the salvation of the world in his sleeve. Hanging from Saturn's belt was the steel rod which he uses secretly in the darkness to sharpen the sword of the morning. But it was still night. Lonely, Majnun stood under the sky, his eyes wandering from star to star. Which of them would come to his aid? At last, during this journey, his eyes reached Venus, and it was she whom the lover addressed first. Venus, lighting up the night, beacon for all those who are searching for happiness in the world, mistress of singers and dancers, your hand holds the key to success. Your wine sparkles in every goblet. You are the seal in the king's signet ring, the queen in the palace of prosperity, the star of noble men and intimate friends. Your gift is the pleasantry on sensitive lips, and those who belong to your circle are scented with ambergris. Be gracious also to me. Open for me the gates of hope. Do not let me wait and starve outside. Look, my soul is sick, and who but you would know the cure? Let me inhale the scent of my beloved while there is still time. After his prayer to Venus, Majnun's eye wandered along the seam of the sky until it encountered Jupiter. Could he not also help? Majnun addressed these words to him. Jupiter, star of delight, whatever you promise, you keep your word. Yours is the care of our souls. You put your imprint on each kingdom in the world, for you are the star of just rulers and judges. It is you who writes the book of grace, and you who determines who is to be victor and conqueror. The structure of the world rests on you. You give my fate its grandeur. My heart draws its strength from you. Keep faith with me. Do not turn your eye away. Help me. Help me if there is still help for me. End of narration. So that takes care of chapter 35, chapter 36 and 37. Now, before we close the episode, just some brief impressions on the chapters we covered today, right? So chapter 35, titled Majnun and the Wild Beast. In this chapter, Majnun has reached a stage where he is starting to radiate this aura, this light, which is very surreal. And Nizami captures it like this. Love was glowing in him. When it burst into flames, it also took hold of his tongue. The words streaming unbidden from his lips, verses strung together like pearls in a necklace. And then Nizami goes on to introduce us to one of the most fascinating parts, probably second to Layla, of Majnun's life that captured everyone's attention back then and continue to do so till date. His relationship with the wild animals. And Nizami introduces this phase like this. To his own kind, he had become a savage. But even a savage is not entirely alone in the world. Even a Majnun has companions. His were animals. And very beautifully in this chapter, Nizami throws a spotlight on this strong human tendency to judge fast and judge wrong. Right? It's as humans, that is a pitfall we have to be very careful of, judging too fast and judging wrong. How humans around Majnun judge him to be an animal, a savage, something wild, something untamed, and they shun him from the society of humans because he behaves strangely. And then Nizami contrasts that very sharply, right? Very sharply with the animals who find Majnun caring, kind, benevolent, and they allow him into their close circle. They allow Majnun to enter their close circle. These wild animals befriend Majnun. And unlike the humans around Majnun, who were unable to see it, these wild animals see the angelic, soulful, love-filled light Majnun radiates. And in fact, they bask in this light. These wild animals bask in this light. They allow this light to transform them. And when you read this chapter, you really have to applaud the way Nizami draws this sharp contrast between the humans and their reaction towards Majnun and the wild animals and their reaction towards Majnun. And then Nizami goes on to detail Majnun's dynamic with these wild animals. This is what he says. He became a king among his court, like Solomon. What a good king indeed! One who never oppressed his own subjects, nor extorted taxes, nor sacrificed their blood to make war on other people. It was a peaceful army that travelled with Majnun as he roamed in wilderness, his animals always at his heels. Was their love less rewarding than that of human beings? Do not believe it. He lived among all these creatures like an exiled ruler in a foreign country, or rather like an angel with his wings tied. Had anyone ever known a shepherd like Majnun? Was there ever a shepherd with such a flock? Leaving the human world, he had come to the wilderness, reconciling wild ones with wild ones. And as he was good, so they became good also. And then moving on to chapter 36, of course, the chapter is about this story. Primarily is about the story of the youth from Marwa, but Nizami in this chapter also continues the theme of contrasting human nature with that of an animal, and concluding that animals are far more superior as a being than humans. Animals possess virtues which theoretically should be part of human makeup, but practically are not, right? Nizami says, are animals not an echo of human beings? They are what we make of them. Human beings may be ungrateful, not so wild dogs. And the youth in the story, he tells the king, you see, your dogs became fond of me and saved my life for a few chunks of meat. And you, my king, just because I once annoyed you, you intended to destroy me. Who is then a better friend, you or your dogs? What a huge statement. And I'm sure all pet owners know very well what I'm talking about. But the fact still remains that animals reciprocate kindness with kindness, love with love, care with care, compassion with compassion. But humans are beings who have the ability to answer compassion with destruction, answer compassion with wrath, with anger. And then the last chapter that we covered today, chapter 37. It's a beautiful chapter. Nizami takes his time in laying out in vivid detail the visualization of this celestial journey during the night, while Majnun, in his desperation, will talk and call out to the stars, the planets, and all celestial bodies to have mercy on him, to come and save him from the pain and grief and hopelessness and darkness that surrounds him. He prays to Venus and he prays to Jupiter, hoping that they will listen to him. It's a very poignant chapter, and Nizami has detailed it beautifully. So, in today's episode, we covered 3 chapters. Let me share them with you. Chapter 35, Majnu and the Wild Beasts. Chapter 36, The Youth and the Lion-Hounds. And chapter 37, Majnu prays to the stars. We will pick it up from chapter 38 onwards in the next episode. As always, let us know whether you like the episode or not. Share your comments with us. If you know somebody who would enjoy this content, share it via your social media. For all new viewers who tuned in today, strong recommendation to go through the episode Introduction to DGMZ, because that will give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind this podcast. Layla-e-Majnun Miniseries has its own dedicated playlist. We have several episodes, not only for the narration, but also for Urdu poetry, paintings related to Layla-e-Majnun. I will go ahead and end this episode now, sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.